Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the ReInvent You podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Carter, and thank you so much for joining and tuning in with me this week. There's a saying that states, you teach people how to treat you. I hear that all the time. I actually say it all the time because I believe in it wholeheartedly. But what does that mean for people? And what does that look like when that statement is being said? And so for those who are listening right now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a moment and just pause. Just kind of stop everything you're doing. If you're driving, don't stop, pull over, or just wait. But this is what I want to ask you a few questions. I want you to ask yourself, do I feel like I'm always being taken advantage of? Do I feel like I'm always having to save people or being the fixer for other people's problems all the time? Do I have difficulty telling others how I feel due to guilt, fear of rejection, not being liked, or even hurting someone's feelings? Have I lost my voice where so much of my identity or even my independence in relationships has been lost, where standing up for myself seems impossible to do? Does my mood seem off balance, where I feel depressed, anxious, or even mentally, emotionally, and physically drained because of my current and or previous relationship attachments? Has my sense of self, has it been developed based on how others perceive me? Those are the questions that I want you to take a moment and ask yourself. And if you answered yes to a few or even all of them, then what are we representing when it comes to ourselves? This is the question you got to ask yourself. What are we unconsciously teaching others when it comes to how we want to be treated? And what I wanted to do today, I wanted to discuss an important action that I think gets overlooked or even misunderstood, and that is effective boundary setting. That's what I wanted to talk about, but I didn't want to talk about it by myself. Okay. I wanted to bring a guest on to have this conversation with. And my guest for today is Chautè Thompson. Okay. Chautè is a licensed psychotherapist in Florida and Georgia, where she does extensive work with families of separation and divorce, parental support, family law services, custody evaluations, and even therapy. As a relationship and restoration expert, she provides coaching and consultations to help women detox after a significant breakup and transition through the healing journey. She is also the owner of Inspiring Hope Counseling Services and Brand New Me. She is a mother of 2 children and a 2-time best-selling author. And so without further ado, Chautè, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you joining me and having this conversation. I had to have a therapist on for this one.
My pleasure. So happy to be here with you.
Absolutely. I met Chautè. We met a couple of years ago in the internet streets. Listen, y'all, you can build some good relationships. That's how I met Chautè. I think we just started following each other because we were talking about the subject matter of divorce and things of that nature. And so we talked a couple of times offline. And so I reached out to her. I'm like, I want you to talk about building better boundaries. Is this something you can do for me? And she definitely said yes. And so I'm grateful and very honored to have you here today. And I want to start off with asking a really simple question, but I think this is a powerful question. Mm-hmm. What is a boundary? because truthfully, I think that's where it starts, right? Defining what a boundary really is. And so what is that?
A boundary is basically being able to set a limit, right? Being in tune with your own needs, your own values, where you're feeling misalignment, right? And then you're able to set some type of limit and standard with others to provide you with mental, physical, emotional, spiritual peace.
That's good. I like that definition. Y'all need to put that on replay. It's a limit. No, it marks an area, because I think we hear the word, well, you boundaries a lot. Well, you should set boundaries. You need some boundaries. And I think maybe some of us just need to get back to the basics of just knowing what the definition of one is.
Definitely.
You said a lot in that definition when it comes to boundaries. What are different types of boundaries that you feel people need to have? Because I think there may be different types, but I could be wrong. But are there different types of boundaries? And if so, what are some of those different types?
You see, I wouldn't necessarily say different types, but it's the way that we hold others accountable to our needs, right? So we
Okay.
have different needs, right?
Absolutely.
We have needs when it comes to the way that we engage physically with others, what we need for ourselves to be emotionally well. In a
Mm,
relationship, we have things that we need to take care of for ourselves interpersonally, but then when we're connecting with others, if we're feeling out of alignment because they are constantly expecting things of us or asking certain things of us, and we're not saying no because we want to please, but in pleasing we're losing ourselves. So these are things that takes place, and then it helps us to now start to feel really icky and like we're constantly just giving and not having things that we need met for ourselves.
no, that's good. So there's different. So I guess maybe, like, I know you mentioned emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so would it be safe to say that we need emotional boundaries, mental boundaries, physical boundaries?
Definitely.
Um, is that something around that realm?
Definitely. Yeah. Because we do have emotional, mental, physical, spiritual needs.
Right.
Those are the boundaries that we need to have in place with others.
Okay. And as a psychotherapist, and then you also work in, like, you specialize in the area of separation and divorce.
Mhm.
Um, what are some of the most common things that people have difficulty setting boundaries with? Is it co-parenting? Is it what are some areas that you see pretty often?
Well, I definitely see the concerns with co-parenting, and then with the co-parenting um, dynamics, it's where now we're having to learn how to let go because we don't have control in the other home, and we want many times after living together for so long and having our children, like one person might put more structure in place for the children. So now when they're in separate homes, each parent wants to kind of control still what's happening in the other person's home. So then those boundaries are being crossed where they're trying to tell the child or the other parent how to do things when they have to start to accept that you only have control in your own home. So that's something that I see on a regular basis.
Mm,
And another thing is where now you're starting to teach that person how to speak to you, how to take the emotions out of it, and really just focus on the facts so you're able to co-parent more effectively.
mm. And that's a whole that's a whole podcast in itself that I think I need to just separate how to co-parent with boundaries, because I think that part can be a lot,
Difficult.
but it can be difficult extremely. And then when it comes to just the dissolution of a marriage, let's
Mhm.
talk as far as just how it leaves people to feel. Maybe them looking back on the whole duration of their marriage or even long-term relationship and
Exactly.
realize that they may have accepted a lot of what was unacceptable.
Mhm.
Um, where do you feel like some people drop the ball when it comes to boundary setting?
Well, I mean, where many people drop the ball is when you get into a relationship, it's cloud nine, everyone's feeling really, really, really good,
Mhm.
right? And during those times, you're able to talk about what you want, what you need, you're getting to know each other. But then once you get to a place where you're all in, your emotions are really there, then you get scared. You get scared to really share what you need because you're scared that you're not going to be accepted. So now it's when the boundaries starts to fall off, because if you don't like something, you're less likely to say it because you don't want to hurt their feelings, or you don't want them to see you in a negative light, or you don't want an argument. And the more this happens, it's a domino effect where you're now starting to accept more and more of what you don't want. But both parties most times are doing this with each other.
And so all it takes is one thing that constantly gets overlooked, and it kind of just manifests, and then it becomes this big thing. And, over time, it almost seems probably even almost unrepairable, just because of maybe the damage that has been done by not setting the boundary or not sticking to the boundary. Is that something?
It definitely
Is that safe to
feels
say?
that way. Yes. Now, can it be repairable? Definitely. Right. But it's by now starting to first sit with self, reflect, start to see, okay, what did I accept? What do I need to really change? What type of conversations do I need to have to kind of say that, okay, I need this to be done differently. And I know that I've accepted it in the past, but it doesn't make me feel good. Right. So when you're reflecting with self, now it's time to start to pay attention to your needs, your values, what makes you feel comfortable, where is the discomfort coming from? And when you start to do that, then you can start to have real, raw, heart to heart conversations, so you can start to set some type of limits.
So reflection, it just really comes back to us as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that's something that we need to kind of emphasize on a little bit, because it can easily turn into blame, pointing the finger and not taking the responsibility, but then constantly seeing similar patterns with probably even different people.
Exactly.
And so let's talk about looking within, because that really where it starts. And you said a person needs to reflect. What is some things, or what are some questions? I know I had a couple of questions that I asked in the beginning, but what are some of the things that, people can get this level of awakening? Because I know you probably get a lot of the same things that I get in the area that we talk about, right? People taking advantage of me. I feel like I'm not heard. I don't know who I am. I feel like I got to fix everybody.
Right.
It's just like the same story, just from a different individual. And so how does one get to that level of reflection? I mean, there's just that looking within, because that's a tough one.
Yeah, it definitely starts with looking within, right? But then I like to have like workshop type sessions, right? Where now let's do the work. Let's start to say, all right, let's identify what's needed. So let's identify our needs, our values, what's really important to you, right? Many people say family is important, right? Many people say respect, faith. These are things that we normally, I know I hear on a regular basis, right? So if these things are important to you, is there anything that's happening that's out of alignment? Or is there anything that you say that you can need? What type of boundary can you put in place? For example, it is important to me to be respected. So that's the limit right there, to be respected. So now when you're interacting with someone, is there anything that's happening that's making you feel disrespected? Right? Are they hanging up with you? Are they using profanity with you, and it's not something that you're comfortable with? Right? Are they are the arguments getting so heated where we cannot agree to disagree, right? And then we're speaking to each other with such disrespect. So now you know that your boundary is to be respected. So now you can reiterate that, right? Hold others accountable. Set that boundary in a clear, assertive manner. Right?
No, I love that. I love that. Now, okay, so there's let's see what's important to us. Okay, respect is important. I value respect. All right, so we need to make sure that we honor this boundary now. And I think that's the part. Now, that's when we have to implement it, where we have to say, hey, Chautè, you know what? The way you talked to me the other day, I don't appreciate it. Saying that part.
Exactly.
Okay, so why is that difficult for most people to do now? Because now we're talking about the implementation piece of it all.
And I truly love that question. And the reason that it's so difficult for so many individuals is because many folks are not in tune with how they truly feel. right? There are primary and secondary emotions, and it's so easy to get stuck in the primary emotion that we don't take the time to really reflect what's beneath there. So what I mean by that is
Okay.
with primary emotions, it could be anger, right? It could be love, sad, like it's those primary, it's about like 5 emotions that we first learned about when we first learned about emotions, right? But what's underneath it? Many times when we're feeling angry, it's because we're truly disappointed, or we're truly hurt, or we're truly embarrassed, right? There's so many things that's underneath it. And when we're able to get to the core of what's really happening, then we can speak to our loved ones and they can hear our hearts. When they hear our hearts, we're truly expressing, I felt really embarrassed and disappointed when you spoke to me with such disrespect by saying XYZ. So now they can understand why you're feeling the way that you're feeling and how they impacted you. And when they can come to terms with that or even see that, now they are more, when they care about you, when they care about you, then they are going to want to do things differently to make sure that they're not negatively impacting you.
Right. And then if it's the opposite, where people really could care less if it impacts you, then what? Because then that's the other part that maybe some people have difficulty expressing due to fear of not being liked, or this person won't talk to me. They won't rock with me anymore. And what does a person do when that takes place?
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is pay attention. Right? So people are going to show you who they are. Pay attention to the patterns of behavior. Pay attention to the way that they're showing up. And words, people can say and do. I mean, say anything, but what they're doing is really showing you how they truly care. Right? So if you tell them it's affecting you, you're letting them know what emotion it's making you feel. And if you're not seeing them intentionally on a consistent basis doing things differently, then they're showing you that you truly don't matter the way that they might say that you do. So now it's time for you to take action, because you are teaching them to continue to disrespect you, or to continue to cross this boundary, this limit that you have put in place by continuing to accept it.
No, that's good, because it goes into, you teach people how to treat you. Right. And I think it just goes into making a courageous decision on what level of access this person needs to you.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? I really do. Should boundaries be flexible?
Flexible. It really depends. My first answer is going to say no. Right? I'm going to say no, they should not be flexible. However, as individuals, we should have a growth mentality. Okay. So if we have a growth mentality, and there's certain things that we're learning, different perspectives that we are gaining, then our boundary might grow in certain ways, or we might see things through different lens and then approach things in a different way. That's the only way that I'm going to say boundaries should be flexible, right? I don't think that we should change our boundary because our partner wants us to just do things differently, or because the people in our lives just want us to bend and fold and do things the way that they want us to do it, because then it's still not aligned with us and what we need, and then we're still hurting ourselves.
No, that's a good answer. I like that. That's actually, I was curious on how you were going to answer, because the word flexible can easily mean, okay, I should bend, I should fold, I should maybe break this boundary. But I love how you said growth, right? Because I can honestly say that my boundaries have grown because I've grown, right? So, and I've learned to really understand other perspectives as opposed to just my own. And that has made my boundary grow. I love that. I love that. This is a question that I really had to ask. I wrote it down. And do you think many confuse building boundaries with building bricks. And let me explain what I mean when I say building bricks, right? This is something that I say quite often. Sometimes we might confuse or think we're creating a boundary when we're probably more so creating a wall, right? Where we ain't let nobody in. Like, I ain't doing, no. And so we confuse that as boundaries when we might just be we might be isolating ourselves completely. Do you see that can be, people can misinterpret or misunderstand boundary setting?
Definitely. Yes. So I'll share with you an activity that I do with my clients on a regular basis for this, right? It's actually in my book, Complemented, Completed, and Whole, right? It's where I let folks now talk about the hurt, or write down in the past relationship, write down all of the hurt that you experienced, right? Now, in the next column, next to each hurt, write down the lesson that you learned from that hurt. And then after we write down the lesson, next, in that next column, write down the boundary or the limits that you're going to put in place to help yourself not to know how to navigate new relationships or new connections based on what you've learned and what you need. Right. And I think this is really, really helpful because I want folks to enter relationships not with baggage. Right. And if we're focusing on the hurt, then we have baggage. We have that brick wall. Right. But if we focus on the lessons learned, now we have newfound ways to enter into new connections. And when we are able to identify, okay, what do I need? What type of limits do I need to put in place? What are the expectations? And how can I make this clear so I'm not experiencing this hurt again? I think that is a really great way to approach setting some healthy boundaries and not letting the bricks and the baggage that we've experienced limit our interactions.
I like that. That's a really good answer. Because we could be, we're thinking we're setting boundaries, but it is off our pain, maybe our baggage, our hurt. And when we look at the hurt, the lessons, and then say, okay, based upon both, what is a healthier approach to drawing the line with myself as well as others? So no, I love that. I like that. I like that. I like that. So, how does a person start? Right? Because I think this part is important too. Because what I found is that there's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of shame, feeling like I'm wrong for setting this boundary that comes. Like those are some of the feelings or emotions that people experience when implementing the boundary. How can one start? And then I like a word that you said that is very important. How can a person consistently keep that going, right? Because that's where we create a new pattern. This is how we create a new normal. And this is how we allow other people to treat us.
Right, right. So it starts by first giving ourselves permission.
Say that again. Say that again. You're not going to just say that and just keep going. Let's say that again.
Definitely. It truly starts with giving ourselves permission.
Absolutely.
Permission to be imperfect, right? Permission to get it wrong sometimes. Permission to start things different. Permission for our past not to define us, right? Permission to be okay with learning and growing and now holding others accountable to this, right? So it really starts there, giving ourselves permission, right? And then once we give ourselves permission, then we start to look inward, think about what we really need, and then start to write these things down. Journal through what you've experienced, journal, like process, allow yourself to do that work, right? And when we're doing this work, then we can start to identify for ourselves how we want to move forward.
Yeah, I like that. Giving yourself permission. I think a lot of us don't do that. We feel like we need somebody to tell us yes. And the power of saying yes to yourself is, I mean, it does do things or create you or give you, I'm sorry, the ability to say, you know what, I choose me. Right.
Exactly.
And part of choosing you is establishing some really healthy boundaries. It shows
Mhm.
how you care for yourself and most importantly, how you respect yourself.
Mhm.
You know, I know you are you say you're a relationship and restoration expert,
Yes.
and you help women to detox after a significant breakup. I think breakups, divorces are major interruptions in people's lives. I actually consider to be an adversity as well, because it can really have a very huge impact on the rest of your life if you allow it to be.
Mhm.
And so that detoxing that you help your clients do you all emphasize the importance of boundary setting in that process?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I really just do the work with them for them to start to think more about, okay, what do you need to say no to a lot more,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's okay to say no if things are not aligned with your goals, with your intentions, and with your boundaries. So when we're starting to focus on that a bit more, forgiving ourselves, forgiving others, even without that apology that we might not receive, and then start doing some work to really cultivate a healthy relationship, starting with ourselves first, right? Having a healthy relationship with self, building that confidence, that self-esteem, that inner worth. And when we do that, then we're able to hold others accountable to boundaries, right? Many times it's hard to hold others accountable to boundaries if we don't feel worthy enough. If we are feeling less than within ourselves, then it's easy to just want to appease everyone, which hurts us.
Right. So let me ask you a question. Is it okay to tell your partner no in a
Definitely.
relationship? I'm saying this because, again, it goes into thinking I should do anything and everything
Mhm,
for someone I'm with, right? Because I think one of the things I hear a lot is I did everything and it didn't work.
mhm.
And one of the things that goes on in my head is, what is everything? Is it even at the expense of your values and your self-respect? Because
Right.
at that point, that's not a noble thing to do.
Mhm.
Even if you really care about this person, even if
Right.
they're a great person, is it okay to say no? And I say this because I think that's important to understand. Like, I know there's a way you do it, maybe compassionately, of course.
Mhm.
Not, no, I ain't doing,
Right.
that's a whole different story. But
Yes.
just really respecting and honoring your no,
Mhm.
even in a romantic relationship. And could you talk about why that's important? Because I would say that there was a time where I wouldn't say no
Mhm.
because I thought that that would show that I love you more than anything.
Mm.
But I also saw that it caused me to unlove myself in the process.
Yes, yes, yes. So something that I teach on a regular basis, and I'm a huge advocate of, is autonomy, right? We need to
Mm,
make sure that we have autonomy in our relationship so we're not losing ourselves, right? So we need to make sure that we're still dating ourselves, we're still enjoying our own company, we're still doing things that we truly love and adore, and then our partner doing the same for themselves, and then us coming together and having our own time. Okay, so with that, our partner respecting when it's our time for self, right? And then us really pouring into ourselves as well. And that means we are going to have to say no sometimes, right? And it's okay. And by loving and being in a loving relationship, both partners should be able to accept that no and still love on each other.
right. And not use it as a way to make you feel guilty.
Right.
Especially like, it kind of goes into, let's talk about high empathetic people, right?
Hmm.
People who loves to help, loves to, they feel everything type,
Hmm.
which I always define it as a superpower. But just like anything that's a superpower, it can also impact us in unhealthy ways if not managed correctly, right? So
Hmm.
what about those people who I mean, they really struggle with that. It sounds great, like as we're talking about it, but then when the rubber meets the road, I'm just a caring person, or maybe even people pleasing. I mean, let's go
Mhm.
even deep further than that. People who have the disease to please. What is the um, what is the best way to approach it?
Balance.
Balance.
Balance is the best way to approach all of that, right? Because when we are truly empathetic or caring or really wanting to help, right? It's just like myself as a, a, a therapist. I love helping, right? I love
Mm-hmm.
helping others, talking to others, getting them where they need to be. And this is just natural for me. But it's so important to make sure that I take some time aside for self. There needs to
Right.
be some type of balance, some type of self-care where I need to pour into me. So the same thing for any individual that's super caring or really wanting to meet others' needs. If you're not spending time pouring into self or spending time with friends or talking to friends or family or whatever it is that's really important to you, think about like those 5 pillars of things that might be truly so important to you, and make sure that you're pouring into each one on a regular basis so you're not experiencing emotional burnout or physical burnout.
No, that's good. I like that because I think it goes into changing the way we have projected taking care of ourselves mean. Like, okay, it means I'm selfish, or if I say yes to me, I'm saying no to something else, which you are, right?
Mhm.
But this is more about realizing that it kind of goes into the oxygen mask analogy, right?
Exactly.
Making sure that you take care of yourself first. Um, do you think women have a more difficult time saying no?
I
Maybe
believe
in what you've experienced, based on what you've experienced from clients and things like that, do you think that they struggle more with
I
saying no?
believe they do struggle a lot more because we have been taught as a society that women are the nurturer, the caring one, to make sure that the other person's needs are met in the home, sexually, like in all areas. You need to make sure that you're taken care. And this is what we've been taught. So now when we're in a marriage or in a relationship, we're pouring into them. But in doing so, if we're not keeping it balanced or pouring into ourselves as well, because we need to be complete and whole by ourselves first before we're in a relationship. The relationship is supposed to complement us, not complete us, right? So when
Mm,
we're in these relationships and we're hoping that it can complete us, it throws us all off, right? So yes, I have found that many times women are pouring into others and saying yes and extra caring, at the demise of themselves.
mm. Wow. Yeah, I think so too, just because of the statement that you said. And then when we're saying you need to set a boundary, that's almost like a foreign language. Like, I don't
Mhm,
know how to do that. How does one do that? And this is why it becomes very difficult, which is why I'm like, well, how does a person really start doing this? It sounds
mhm.
empowering, but again, when you have to start implementing this stuff, it starts to get real. And I believe it's also safe to say you're going to lose some relationships in the process. Is that true sometimes? I mean, because I think sometimes we fear of what we might lose. But as I tell people, you have to realize how your relationships were built,
Right.
right? Were they built on you always having to do? Was it just beneficial for the other person? And so
Mhm,
just in my eyes, that's a beautiful thing because you're creating room
mhm.
for authentic connections. You
Exactly.
know, is that accurate?
It is accurate, right? And I'm a firm believer. I think it's so important to have effective communication. So for friendships that you feel, when you start to sit back and reflect and think for yourself, what's serving you, what's not serving you, what's aligned, what's not, how's it making me feel? And then you start to identify which friendships or associations or connections are not feeling in a really good place. Sit down and actually have a chat with them. You know, chat with them, let them know how you feel, how you view the relationship, the things that you feel has been in a misalignment, and then how you would like it to go differently. This is a great time to now make that boundary clear and in an assertive manner, communicate it. So now you can start to hold them accountable to it. And if they don't do it, then they're showing you that they don't care to have you in and have that relationship with you the way that you might have wanted it with them. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. It's about valuing the relationship, right? Mm-hmm. Just really understanding, like, help me understand why you feel the way you do, or what am I doing to cause that, showing some level of empathy, understanding, some level of concern. When people just shut you down, tune you out, not interested in how you feel, then again, that's telling you something as well. And I think that's really important. Let's go to childhood for a moment, because I would say in quite a few cases, a lot of our childhood experiences, it impacts how we move as adults, right? How we make decisions, how we create connections. Just based on your experience and based on what you can share as a therapist, does it seem to be that the inability to set boundaries has a lot to do with maybe how they was raised as children?
I never thought of it that way, but as you're asking the question, what comes to my mind are basically the attachment styles, right? And based on the way that attachments were formed, or the way that parents really provided a secure type of attachment, or if it was more anxious or avoidant, or I forgot the fourth one right now at the top of my head, but the way that parents treated their children when they needed something, if they provided that type of security, if they did it in an inconsistent manner, right? And then by modeling, right? That also plays a huge role in what we see, and the values that our parents have can come down and be our own values as well. So it can play a role. Yes.
Okay. So sometimes it does involve going back down memory lane just to see those attachment styles, and based on those attachment styles, can impact their inability to either set boundaries or not set them.
Right. Okay. And it's how we were treated as kids, right? If our parents always met our needs and modeled healthy relationships, then we are more prone to do the same. But if we did not receive that type of security, if we did not see those types of healthy dynamics in the home or with our parents, with others, then it can trickle down with how our friendships developed as children, teenagers, and then in adulthood.
Right. So when people say, well, I didn't see my mom take care of herself. Like, even though she never told you not to take care of yourself,
right,
she showed you that how to take care of yourself based on her actions. That's safe to say that you can easily kind of unconsciously pick that up and be the same way and not even realize that that's what you're doing.
Right. And that's why it's important for us to be intentional with taking the time to acknowledge and identify, how do we want our future to look like? And once we identify how we want it to look like, okay, what do I need to do differently in the here and now to be able to get that?
Right. Because I think, and I love the word intentional. I swear that's my favorite word in the dictionary. I mean, I say it all the time, because all of this really is intentional to do, specifically when you really exit out of a relationship. Have you seen it where when someone is transitioning or in the process of getting out of something that is extremely toxic, right? So, and when I think of something that's extremely toxic, I'm talking about on a high range of narcissism, extremely high conflict, the residue that type of stuff leaves a person, right? Like, how does that type of person, or who's experienced that particular dynamic, how do they go about making sure that they don't fall back into the trap of something like that again? Because I think that, I'm not going to say it's easier, but I am going to say that sometimes we can be creatures of habit.
Mhm.
And we can easily leave something and kind of get into something else very
Right.
similar. And
Mhm.
so, how does a person truly prevent that? Do you suggest that they take some time before they get into another relationship and really work on some deep self work? Or what does that look like for somebody who's been in something like that?
I would say to begin with, start with therapy. Right? Start with going to a professional, talking about what you've experienced and how it's impacted you, because it's impacted you in so many ways that you might not even realize. Right.
Mm,
So start by doing that work. Okay. And after you do that work, that therapist is going to help you through journaling, processing, coming up with different ways to approach relationships. But really, it starts with looking inward, doing some self work, and that starts with the therapist. And then from there, you got to start rebuilding, right? Because the impact of those types of relationships can really put you in a mindset that you're not truly ready for a new relationship yet. So start to rebuild self to where you are able to know what to look for or what not to accept, really. So you're able to have healthier connections.
absolutely. I like that you said therapy. I'm an advocate for therapy. I tell people all the time, you need a therapist. And I
Mhm.
think in dynamics like these, I feel like that's just a requirement, not to make anyone feel bad, but your confidence gets stripped, your
Mhm.
self-esteem gets stripped, your voice, you don't even know where that is. And
Exactly.
so, like you said, rebuilding, finding that voice,
Mhm.
reestablishing that confidence, and building that really unbreakable self-esteem.
Mhm.
Because those I've just seen the impact, and I'm sure you've seen the impact of how
Mhm.
it truly can leave a person and
Right.
how they parent, how they entertain other relationships, just their jobs. It just does so much to a person. And so
Mhm.
I know I wanted to just throw that in there. And so um I know we're kind of pressed for time, but I just wanted to just ask one more question. What can you say to someone who's listening right now, who's really maybe just in a relationship, maybe exiting out of a relationship, or even been out for a while,
Mhm.
and find themselves struggling with knowing their values, knowing what matters to them, understanding what they need? They may say, Chautè, you're right. I do need to have more boundaries, but I'm struggling with implementing them. I'm struggling with understanding my own value, my own worth. What can you say to that woman who's listening right now to help her build better boundaries for herself?
I'm gonna say start to make the list of things that you can start to do for yourself, to start to have fun with self, not thinking about anyone else but you. And as you're doing these things, these activities, you're gonna start to get to know yourself again. And take
Mm,
the time to get to know you, because then it'll help you to better identify what you need, what's important to you, what you like, what you dislike, right? And when you're able to start to make sense of those things, then you'll be able to start to identify what your values might look like. And when you're able to identify that, then you can start setting some limits with others based on what's out of alignment with what you need.
right. No, that's good. That's good. Start dating yourself.
Mhm,
Figuring you out. Start collecting data
mhm.
on yourself and just figure out your likes and dislikes. No, that's really good. How can people find you?
Definitely. People can connect with me on Instagram, which is at Chautè Thompson, Facebook, Brand New Me Journey, and my website, Brand New Me Journey.
Okay. And you also have your books on your website as well. You wrote two books, right? And what are the name of
Yes.
those books?
The name of those books are Brand New Me, Complemented, Completed, and Whole. And the other one is Brand New Me, The Pursuit of Happiness.
That's good. Brand new me editions. All right, girl.
Yes.
I like that. I like that. So,
And then to add, I'm licensed in Florida and in Georgia. So if
mhm.
someone's looking for therapy, they can go to my website, Inspire Hope Health Healing.
All
Inspire
right.
Hope Health Healing.
That's good. That's good. And so I'm going to put all of that in the show notes where people can find you, your books, your website, so that people can reach out to you and connect with you, especially if they're in the Georgia and Florida area and they need some level of therapy. Do you do it via Zoom as well?
Yes, I do.
You do? Okay, awesome. That's good. So yeah, y'all connect with Chautè. Chautè, it's been a pleasure to have this conversation. I think boundaries is a very much needed topic, something that needs to be talked about more and more.
Definitely.
And I know that there's going to be somebody who's going to be touched by this. And I appreciate you joining and being a guest for today's episode. You
Thank
take
you for
care.
having me. You too.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.